Hey there, it's Ed Rush, and welcome to your challenge for the month. Your challenge is actually right on the screen, right to my right hand side, and it's the failure rule. Now, this might not sound like the most exciting rule, but I'm going to tell you when you embrace this the way that I'm going to teach it to you in just a minute, it will totally change your life. The failure rule says this: failure is a gift. It's a precious indication that I have veered off target. I choose then to see failure as a sign pointing to a much needed correction. For every one success, I've had 10 failures. Thank you, failure. Now, that last line, the second to last line that says for every one success, I'd have 10 failures, it's probably more like 20. If you want some help on this, by the way, there's an awesome Disney movie you probably haven't seen before that talks about this in a great way. It's called Meet the Robinsons. This up here on the board. If you haven't seen this, and this, by the way, isn't your challenge for the month. I just watched this with my kids. The challenge is the failure rule. And your goal this month is to embrace every challenge that comes your way underneath the failure rule. So, for example, you sit down and your computer doesn't work. You sit down and the printer doesn't work. You try to maybe do a deal and the person doesn't respond, or maybe they don't say yes, or maybe they say no. You send out an email to your list and someone complains, okay? Those are all encompassed underneath failure. Maybe you stand up on stage for the very first time and you try to sell some books or a product and nobody ends up investing in it. I'm going to tell you, over and over and over again in my life, I had frustrations and failures and difficulties, and it led me to where I am today. I'm going to tell you a quick story. From the first time, this is back in 2007, I'd been out of the Marine Corps for like a half a year. I had started to learn how to speak a little bit, and I had a product for basketball referees. And I went and spoke at this training session. It was about a 25-person session, and at the end of it, I was going to offer this course for $297. And as I spoke and did my talk, I was feeling good, and people were responding, and then all of a sudden, I went into that part of the talk where I'm offering the product at the end. And I don't know if you've ever done this before, but it's common for speakers to get a little bit nervous at the end of this thing. And I started getting nervous. Actually, I was holding onto the paper and my hand was shaking. And I looked him in the back, and my dad was there, who I did this business with. And the look on my dad's face, man, I thought he was just embarrassed for our family. He wasn't, by the way, but that was the way that I was interpreting it at the time. And as I'm going into this, I could hear this voice in the back of my head that's like, "You're blowing it, man. Nobody's going to buy this thing. You're a failure. You flew up here, you gave this talk, and now people are going to make fun of you." And I could hear them talking about me in my imagination. And I got done, and I finished, and I said thank you, and I closed my computer, and I looked up, and there were two guys standing there. Both of them had their forms filled out. I'm like, "You guys sure about this? Like, you sure you want to buy this thing?" And I found out later, by the way, a little right around 10%. So it was about 2 out of 24 guys. A little less than 10%, maybe 8.5%, 9% people. That's actually not that bad for a speaker to have 10% or right around 10% of the people. I thought I was doing horrible, but next thing you know, I got my trip paid for. I got a little bit of experience under my belt, and all those inner voices were actually wrong. Maybe there were some people who didn't want to hear a thing about a product offering, and maybe there were some people who maybe were a little bit offended, but you know what? There were two referees there whose lives and careers were changed because of the thing that they invested in. And so you've got this little voice in the back of your head, and here's your challenge for the month. That little voice is just going to stop for a month. That's all. Every time something happens that doesn't work out, which is going to happen a lot, by the way, over the next 30 days, you're simply going to say the last words that are on the screen behind me, which is this: thank you, failure. Because you're going to realize what I realize, which is on the verge of every big breakthrough I've ever had, right before that was typically my biggest frustration or failure. And I don't know why it works that way in the world that we're in, but it just does. Okay, so your job this month is to say thank you to failure, to embrace it, because good things are on the other side. Tell me how it went, okay? I'll talk to you soon.